Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, Judith Jameson, Ntozake Shange, Nina Simone, and Sweet Honey in the Rock, with our guest panelist, Angela Harvey, Monique Holmes, Rachel Mariano, and Elise Minor. And I am honored to serve as your host, Wandrea McCall Hampton. Come on, let's celebrate Black History Month.
An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. I think that is true of painters, sculptors, poets, musicians. As far as I'm concerned, it's their choice. But I choose to reflect the times and the situations in which I find myself. That, to me, is my duty. And at this crucial time in our lives, when everything is so desperate, when every day is a matter of survival, I don't think you can help but be involved. Young people, black and white, know this. That's why they're so involved in politics. We will shape and mold this country, or it will not be molded and shaped at all anymore. So I don't think you have a choice. How can you be an artist and not reflect the times?
Well, welcome to the conversation. I am so excited that we are here tonight and we're going to honor some amazing women. Like Nina Simone just said in that clip, it is an artist's responsibility to reflect the times. That's why we're here. We are here to celebrate those amazing African-American women who use their artistry and their creativity to give voice to social injustice, to racial inequality, and to gender bias. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to each of our honorees on tonight. The incomparable poet, memoirist, and civil rights activist, Dr. Maya Angelou. The uncompromising poet, writer, commentator, activist, and educator, Nikki Giovanni. The artistic phenom, dancer, and choreographer, Judith Jameson. The genius of poet, performance artist, playwright, and novelist, Ntozake Shange. The unyielding high priestess of soul, singer, songwriter, musician, arranger, and civil rights activist, Nina Simone. The legendary musical historians of the Black experience, Sweet Honey in the Rock. Joining me on this journey tonight are four of my sister friends. When I first imagined tonight, I imagined us, in front of the fireplace with some big throw pillows and just really just talking and having some good dialogue about tonight's topic. But COVID is COVID and we are being safe. So we are safe in our homes, but the conversation is too important to wait. It must go on. So we're celebrating these honorees because of the impact that they've had in each and every one of our lives. So our first panelist is Angela Harvey. She's a leader at a Fortune 500 company, impacting the lives of her consumers daily. She's inspired and ignited by her father, Balozi Zaid Harvey, a political and social justice activist. Angela carries the mantle, and she is passionate and participates in numerous social action initiatives while empowering others about social ills and the need for reformation. Audience, welcome Angela Harvey. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Angela. It is great to have you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Next panelist is Monique Holmes. Monique didn't just sit by and comment on social media about the unrest and social injustices that led the headlines of 2020. Monique got involved. She became a mentor of young African-American girls and actively participated in voter registration drives. She's a healthcare administrator by day and a health and fitness instructor by night. Monique also finds the time to pursue her first love, which is acting. Welcome, Monique Holmes. How are you tonight, Monique?
I'm feeling great. Thank you, Andrea.
Next, I've known this wonderful woman for many years. She's an educator and poet. Rachel Mariano was born into an artistic family. Her father was a playwright, and her mother is a classically trained mezzo-soprano. Rachel's first book of poetry, I'm so excited to announce, will be released in late 2021. The poetess herself, Rachel Mariano. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And last and certainly not least, I declare this woman is my sister from another mister. She is the one and only Elise Miner. She is a consummate professional whose passion to empower everyone she meets is evident in her daily life. She is assigned to be the voice of courage from the standards and stigmas placed on people. Elise's love of family has made her an armchair genealogist, and she spends time uncovering lost ancestors in her family tree going back hundreds of years. I welcome our last panelist, Elise Miner.
My honor. Hi, everybody.
So ladies, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. I have so been looking forward to sitting down with you guys, seriously. So we ask our viewing audience to comment, ask questions in the chat. I want tonight to be interactive, and we'll try to get to as many comments and questions as we can. Share, like, call your girlfriends, text your girlfriends, tell them to come on Victory in Christ Christian Center, Facebook Live or YouTube. You don't want to miss tonight's conversation. Our first honoree is Dr. Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou played a role in the civil rights movement. And after hearing Dr. Martin Luther King in 1960 at a church in Harlem, she decided to help the Southern Christian Leadership Conference raise funds. She staged a cabaret using her talents and the talents of others. It was a cabaret for freedom. And later she became the Northern coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership's New York City office. Ladies, what responsibility do creatives have to use their voice to promote and support social issues?
Well, Andrea, I feel that they have a platform, and their platform is that usually that whether they're a singer, a poet, actress, someone's listening to them. So they need to utilize their platform to help us fight against these social ills of the world and social injustices, and not just, you're taking money from people for your talent, so now you need to give back, you need to pay forward. And so I feel that they should utilize their creatives to help in this fight.
I definitely agree with that, Miss Angela. Especially now when we have so many platforms and avenues of communication to be able to hear authentic voices, bringing light and awareness to some of the issues in society, and especially that are affecting the Black community. And I find it interesting that young people are so quick to embrace for entertainment purposes, which makes it all the more important for artists of today, creatives of today, to use their platform to reach the masses in a different way and share the knowledge of needing them, to step up to the plate, to send the invitation.
So good.
think,
Anyone?
I think creative people have an advantage because creativity, the arts, it's a way of communicating without the highest degree of defenses. People are like, oh, that's music. That sounds good. Let me give a listen.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's poetry or whatever it happens to be, it has a way of helping you pull back your defenses and just give a listen. And in that opportunity, you might hear something that you hadn't heard before because you're not so busy trying to figure out how you're going to respond. It kind of lulls you to sleep, but at the same time wakes you up.
Amen.
Yes, I just want to piggyback off of what Miss Rachel said. That's exactly what I was going to say. I love when creatives use their platforms or their performance to spread awareness of social injustices. They bring awareness in a different way, and so that everyone can be involved. And it also eases our soul a little bit when we have a good song, and it makes us feel good. And I just love it.
I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, as we all know, is Dr. Maya Angelou's memoir. It depicts her life growing up in the Jim Crow South. She once wrote, "If growing up is painful for the Southern Black girl, being aware of her displacement is the rust on the razor that threatens the throat." Are there moments in your life that you've been displaced because of your race or your gender?
Yes. I can say also being a Southern Black girl, growing up in the South and being dark skinned, it, for me, I felt displaced kind of in my own family because we had a lot of colorism going on within my family, and it was like being from opposite sides of the track. And in my family, we were more of the fair skin until I came along.
You broke the mold, Mo. You broke the mold.
I broke it. It's done. And I often felt displaced. My own family made me feel that way, and I don't think they did it on purpose. It was just almost like a privilege. Their fair skin to them was like a privilege, and they wanted to hold on to it. It's almost like if you're wealthy, if your family is wealthy, you want to hold on to that wealth. That's a privilege. You want to hold on to it. So I kind of got it, but as a little girl, I didn't get it. I just felt, oh, I'm different, or why did God make me this way, or what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my skin? Why didn't I pass the paper bag test? And I have family members would tell me that, I wasn't clean, or I should wash again, or put bleach in my bath water. As a little kid, that's just very, very hard to understand. And it took me a while. I still deal with it to this day, but I do love myself now. And it took a long time to get there and to even forgive them and understand why they did those things. But they did love me. They were like, whose baby is this? But then they couldn't help but love me.
Well, I can say as a dark-skinned sister that I've definitely felt displaced as a youth. And unfortunately, the displacement was heavier on friends and not so much family, but friends, growing up in my neighborhood. Oh girl, you dark as toast, look at you, blah, 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 blah. And thank God for my family who instilled such a sense of Black pride that their voice, the voice of the negativity, was not as easily accepted. I mean, but I still had to fight to remember that this dark skin is beautiful. And I still even fight today, which is very unfortunate. But the encouraging part in all of this is that today you see a greater celebration of the various hues that Black folks come in. And it's a little bit more difficult for I think for a dark-skinned young girl to feel the heavy weight of not feeling beautiful, because there's so many other examples of dark-skinned sisters as beautiful.
I was thinking about this question, and I thought it was so interesting because I had to really go deep and try to think when I felt the first time I felt displaced. And so, similar to Rachel, my family was a very supportive and strong family. And my mom instilled in us at a very young age to love ourselves and to love the skin we were in and to embrace who we were. I think when I went to school is when I realized that I was really tall and awkward and trying to fit in with my counterparts who were smaller. So I just felt like, I was compared like masculine because I was so much taller and bigger than all the my friends. And just trying to understand how to embrace myself the way my family saw me, the way I saw myself inside, but also not shrink back in who I was in order to accommodate a greater audience outside of my immediate family. So that was the first time that I felt out of sorts. And that probably was in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And it's funny how those memories stay with you because it took so much time to undo those feelings of that I belonged and that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. Yeah, so it's an interesting question.
I felt the same way as you, Elise, that it was very interesting. And I was trying to think of when you say displaced, and I just think about growing up, um, and we were made to go to Catholic school. You know, with my dad, I always went to like we went to learn Swahili and different things. But then when we went to Catholic school, I think I felt displaced because I was so used to everything, black power, and then you go into a Catholic school and you're being taught their way, their religion, and I remember one time in class I raised my hand, and this was actually in high school, and I was at an all girls Catholic school, and I raised my hand just to say to the religion teacher, I said, if we have people starving in the world, and I wasn't trying to be sarcastic, I said, if we have people in the world that's starving, why is the Pope, drinking out of gold cups and gold on the Bible? And his face got so red,
Mm,
and he kicked me out of class. And my mom had to come get me from school. They wouldn't, and I never at that point understood like what I did wrong. I thought I was just asking a question. I was just trying to learn. So I always felt in that environment that I was, in a situation because of how I grew up with my dad, that I had been displaced and I wanted to go to public school so bad, just to, people in my neighborhood, my friends, and then also after school I would take off my uniform because I worked as a library page, and I didn't want to be in the library in my uniform. I wanted to be like the other kids and just, feel like I was normal and a part of my community. Where
mm,
there I didn't feel that. I didn't really embrace it. So when I did get to go to public school, actually one of my 4 years of high school, I just felt like there was where I belonged.
mhm,
And understanding that my parents were trying to, give you a better education, but still with that came that that struggle of trying to fit in with the, you know, the people and what how they taught and what they taught,
Mhm.
and knowing I was going home to something totally different, a different environment.
Mhm.
So Angela, that must have been like really as a young child having to navigate two worlds almost. That's what I'm hearing. How
Yes.
did you manage to navigate between the world that you were growing up in and the world that you were being educated in and still keep a sense of yourself?
I think because what happens is when you find that group of friends, and most of my circle now or friends who I did go to school with, that we grew up together. So just making sure that you kept that close knit, and you know that loyalty, so that you know you could speak and be free about your feelings, and you know walk through that process. Um, it, you know, you didn't want to be ungrateful. Like I didn't want to go home ever and say, oh, I don't want to be there, or you know, not try to adjust because I knew why I was there. But it was just the fact of that, like you said, it was trying to like live in these two different worlds, like knowing all, you know, going home and being a part of different social justice initiatives with my dad, and not being able to go to school and speak about those things,
Mhm.
with being afraid that I might get kicked out of class again.
That's
You
good.
guys are amazing. I have one more question for you in this section as we honor Dr. Maya Angelou. One of her famous quotes says, "A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song." What are the lyrics to your song?
Well, growing up as a child, again, my dad was a jazz man, and my mom oldies but goodie and R&B. So, it, you know, in the '70s, I fell in love with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and as I was thinking about this question and thinking about my favorite songs of theirs, there was something that came to me in thinking about the world today and what's actually going on. And the one song is the Way of the World. And when they talk about there, when it says, a child is born with a heart of gold,
Mm.
and the way of the world makes their heart so cold. And when you think about that, that's with really with everything. It's generational. It's people of the world. Kids come, you're born so innocent, and and all that you know, if you're born to a loving pair of parents or parent, and what happens is then reality is the world, and that's what makes people change, and people not becoming loving and caring. And so when you think about that, when I was thinking about what's the lyric to the song, I was thinking, how can we continue when we're raising our children, so that, because we can't shelter them from everything, but how can we help to make them understand that they still need to love and grow in this world, even though of what all that they see. And how do we, you know, continue to teach them that that's what comes first.
So true.
I'll share.
Mhm.
I wrote down you become free when you find the true authentic self, and that's where your power lies. And that goes back to that displacement question that you asked us. It kind of goes back to that because I spent a lot of my life just trying to figure out who I was, what I liked, what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, and I was trying to just fit in. I was trying to fit in with my family. I was trying to fit in with society. I was trying to fit in with my friends. And I always felt different. Even when I tried to fit in, I felt awkward. And that's because I was trying to fit in and I wasn't being my true self. I wasn't being the unique person that I am. And when I started to do that, and I'm still working on that every single day, but I think I found her. And when I found her, I found my power.
Wow. Wow.
Well, I thought that was a really hard question too, Andrea. So insightful. For me, I had to go back and play the soundtrack of growing up because I grew up in the 70s and my mom was very active and very pro-black and you got to know who you are. So the of our life was Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind and Fire and all of those those themes of knowing who you are, even James Brown. But my coming of age was in New York City when hip hop was just the song and the cries of the streets. So those songs to me, the message and things like that are the songs that take me to a place where I felt movement in my soul, that I had a voice and that people understood who we were and where we were coming from. So I would think the message by Curtis Blow was probably my awakening song, if that makes sense to you. Now I have a whole tribe of other songs. I love jazz and all kinds of other things and gospel, yes, but the song that I think awakened me to who I needed to be and who I really was probably was the hip hop songs of the late 70s and the 80s.
Hey, that is fine. I'll take it. Rachel, would you like to share?
Yeah, I was thinking deeply about this one too. And I guess one song that my mother said that she always loved to hear was Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely? And I was the only girl in my family, 2 brothers and just me. And she would say, "That's your song, Rachel, that's your song." And growing up for so much of my preteen and teen years, I didn't feel like that. But now I am learning more and more each and every day to walk that way, even to the point where people like, she thinks she all that. And I do. So I would say that's my song, and learning to walk in that loveliness with or without you. And I mean that whether someone's with me or not, whether people understand me or they don't, just to walk in that loveliness and rejoice in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you guys, thank you for being so authentic with your song lyrics. I know that was tough. But thank you. Somebody needed to hear that.
I'm laughing at least because when you said James Brown, that was one of my first albums that was given to me when I got my first record. I say record player because back then I could make and that was one of the first albums that was given to me as well.
Yes, you had to play it out, the whole side, both sides, A side and the B side. Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's something about those B-side songs. I keep telling people, you keep playing the A side, you're missing some good stuff on the B side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our next honoree is Nikki Giovanni. She has been active in civil rights movement and activism. She was the voice of the 60s and the 70s with her establishment of the Black arts movement, and she continues to be a force even today. She's an American poet and commentator and educator, but in 1968, she wrote a groundbreaking book. She published Black Feeling, Black Talk, Black Judgment. Her poem, Nikki Rosa, talks about childhood remembrances and growing up Black. She so intricately details life is only people in her community would understand, and states, "I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me because they never will understand Black love is Black wealth. And they'll probably just talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy." What are some of the misconceptions people have about growing up Black, people, the white people, people that don't have our experience. What are some misconceptions that they have about growing up Black that we need to clarify?
We're happy. We have great memories. We have great, strong communities. Our Black men, although some may be broken, they love us. Our Black women, although some may be broken, they love us. Um, we don't need to be fixed. We are whole and complete within ourselves, and everything that we need to grow, we have within our own community.
I love that. That was perfect.
Yes.
Well said, yes. I was thinking that like we don't need handouts. Like so many times, we're always looked at like um as me, I always felt though as a single mom, I worked every day. And if as soon as someone sees a single mom at home, a African American mom, it's the assumption that she's collecting some form of payment from the government, or that she's lazy. And sometimes that's not it. Sometimes it was childcare is so it was expensive that the best thing was for them to be home, but not knowing how that person is being supported, but always people assuming how that they were living. So I feel that that's still a big misconception, that we're, and Elise, you said it so well. You grow up in a home, you in a home full of love. You don't know that what you're missing, what you're not getting, because all your needs are being met by those parents and family members who love you. And you weren't skipping, whether you were eating a soup, you still were being fed. You still were getting that. And even like what you said with your mom, they always poured into us. So we were not only just being fed physically, we always were fed emotionally and spiritually to grow into always to be better. One thing I always remember my dad saying is that, the each generation should do better than the generation before. And I always think about that when I'm making decisions of things that I'm doing, and making sure that, we're not wasting time just doing things to be doing them. How are they, impacting, and how is this going to help someone and make it powerful? But I think that that misconception is that, you know, um, we're a people who always need things from someone else, and we don't.
And even can I add on,
Sure.
from the time that we were enslaved here, we learned and we brought the idea and the love for community with us. And so, even in the worst of times for us here, out of our place, being displaced, we formed these communities of strength. So, even though it may appear to be weak and there may be some kinks, there's something within us that we know how to gather together. We know how to garner our strength and to help each other. Um, this past summer, I spent a lot of time in New York with my mother in love, and to see them, they come from the South, Jim Crow South, to New York, and what stayed with me was their ability. They have friendships that are over 60 years old. They all came from teens up to the north to make a better life. But the level of commitment to their community is just amazing to me. And I said to my daughter, I said, that is the foundation. That is why you do what you do. I do what I do. We don't realize that these things are passed down to us, that they model it for us. But I got a chance, God gave me the ability to step back and to see how this has been modeled generation after generation, that we take care of each other. We love our families. We create a community that is healthy. you know, and I just love it. I love the Black family, you know, in all its intricacies.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick that I just remember not knowing that we were poor until I got bused to the white school. And I had no idea that we were poor. I thought maybe my mom just didn't go shopping or something. That's why we didn't have food that week. Because there was so much love. It was so much community. Even in my neighborhood, I remember a lot of my family lived in my neighborhood. So whenever, if my mom missed a step or she had to go to work, somebody, go down the street, the Aunt Betty house. And, it was just a great community. It was a great childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that being aware of culture, or being quote unquote cultured, is not an economic, it's not a thing of privilege. It's a thing of just, do you desire to know? Do you desire to experience? I can recall when I first got into the workforce, I was sharing a picture of my home with one of my white colleagues, and I don't even, she noticed the piano in the house, and she was like, "Oh, you have a piano?" I'm like, mm-hmm. And I'll never forget her reaction, as like Black folks aren't supposed to have a piano or know about certain things. And it made me just realize, like, wow. And the piano was not about a privileged status. Folks like music, they get a piano, especially if they want, to play it, and you can find that in any socioeconomic status. If that's something your child really want. My grandmother, in fact, I still had a piano in this house right now. I know they had to work hard to get that thing, but they got it, because it meant something. So don't underestimate what you think a Black person should know, because it's something that is normally, or in their eyes, reserved for the elite or for a specific socioeconomic background.
But do you find, or did you growing up find yourself overcompensating? Like, I know I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn girl, 336 Blake Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, Brownsville section. And I remember when my mom got a job and she moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania, and we all moved as a family. And, I was the only Black girl in my honors class. And I remember with even the entrance exam, I took it once, blew it out the water. They made me take it again in front of a proctor because they thought that I cheated. But that was my experience growing up in Allentown. But I always found myself in class feeling like I had to prove, like, no, yes, I grew up in Brooklyn, but I am intelligent. Do you guys find, or did you find yourself having to overcompensate growing up?
I did, because like I said, I had got bused to a white school, which I didn't want to go to. I wanted to stay in my neighborhood. But because we got bussed out there, I was like, okay, now I got something to prove. My mom said you're going. So now I got something to prove. But the interesting thing is that my daughter went through the same thing. She's 19 now, but in high school, again, she was the only Black girl in her honors class. And it's the same scenario. And, I just find that so interesting that that it could still happen. I didn't even know until she came home and told me one day. And I was like, really? You going through that? Yeah.
I can relate to that as well. I remember a good portion of my career was working in a predominantly white school. And the first opportunity that I had to work in a Black school, I felt so free, just to be able to, just the way we speak, the way we connect. I was like, oh my God. I didn't realize how much I was walking, maybe on eggshells, or just having to be so particular So yes, I can relate to that. I did compensate.
That is so amazing to me, which is why it's important, the representation and seeing ourselves in corporate America, or, whether we're head of a corporation, a school teacher or doctor, what that representation is so important, because we get to see I'm not the only one, and our children get to see that, these things are possible. I can achieve. I can become a doctor. I can become, a prima ballerina. I can become anything that I put my mind to. I can be an entrepreneur. And to me, that is the heart of the sadness. I'm about to cry. I'm trying to get my life together here, of not honoring and celebrating Black History Month the way we used to. I don't understand what has happened to us as a people, that we don't almost even demand to be acknowledged. Yes, we have 1 month, but Black history is every day. And Nikki Giovanni wrote a poem about Black History Month, and she says, if Black History Month is not viable, then wind does not carry the seeds and drop them on fertile ground. Rain does not dampen the land and encourage the seeds to root. Sun does not warm the earth and kiss the seedlings and tell them plain, you're as good as anybody else. What has happened that we don't honor Black History Month like we used to?
Our history is so rich and ever changing. And sometimes, um, not blaming, but I think what happens is it has to start generational at home. History is home. Our story is every day. There's something. I know I learn things all the time, inventions, things that people do. Like when you're posting things, Wandria, sometimes I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that. So I think what happens is, if we don't start it at home, and then, like you stated, demand that right, even in our educational system. It's like, I remember my kids, which was just what, maybe 7 8 years ago, Black History Month, still writing papers on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, like they were the only two that existed. And I'm like, no. And then my daughter and my son, knowing, because they know they used to sit under my dad and listen and learn, they knew that there was much more out there besides that. But I just really feel like, it has to start with us. And like you said, we have to make that demand, and not just sit back and just look at it, because it really isn't just a month. Our history is every day, and it's constantly changing every day. And that, we have to teach our children, you have a right to go into your school system and ask, for more than what you're getting. You have that right. So that's where I feel that it starts, with us too, generational, making sure that we're instilling. I remember sitting and listening to my grandfather, and learning how he was a cook for Marcus Garvey. And those things were interesting. Now children like, yeah, 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 and they walk away, when we have to make them know, you need to listen, you need to know this, so then you can take this to your children, and your children can take it to their children.
Our resident genealogist, do you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's so important for our young people, and for us to, even those in our generation, to really connect with um, our our culture, our
Yes.
ancestry, who we are. Even sometimes I get taken aback because um, Zora Neale Hurston says, "All my skin folk ain't my kinfolk." Right? And so the narrative has to be that you understand who your kinfolk are, their contributions, not all of us that were enslaved were destitute. Not all of us that were enslaved did not go on and create these great stories and narratives. The people that we learn about, their ancestors, a lot of them come from, dire straits and very challenging situations. For me, part of my passion of searching my history is because I wanted to understand what my story was, because I wanted to make sure that my children, when they were young, they understood who they were, um, from a cultural perspective, what their identity, what that meant. You're Afro-Caribbean. You're not just Black. You're Afro-Caribbean. And what does that mean? What countries do you come from? Why do we do some of the things that we do? Why do you look the way that you do? Why do you move the way that you do? I wanted them to understand all of who they were, and that seed was sown into me by my mom, who she didn't know. She used to say, "Oh, your father's from the Caribbean and we just from Baltimore." But that wasn't enough for me. And so on that journey, just archiving and curating all of the stories and the people of who I am has caused my shoulders to go back and up. And learning even people that are not related to me, but some of the stories that you read, how they overcome, like, it just fills you with so much pride. So I think it's so important in the schools, in the homes, like you said, Angela, for us to know the stories and then to tell the stories. Yeah.
Knowledge is power. And Maya Angelou said it best. She said, when you know your history, you're liberated.
You're liberated.
And we're here to bring liberation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Talking about liberation, at age 77, Nikki Giovanni was the voice in the 2020 election cycle. I love her because she did not bite her tongue.
Mm-hmm.
She laid out not only just from a political standpoint, but from a social responsibility standpoint of our need to vote and the power of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look now at a clip from Nikki Giovanni in 2020, talking about the power of the vote.
I'm Nikki Giovanni. I'm a poet. I'm 77 years old. I hope to be 78, I'm just a poet. I only have words. So the words I wanted to share were thug life. Tupac was a big fan of voting. I, too, am a thug. And this poem is entitled Vote. It's not a hug, nor mistletoe at Christmas. It's not a colored egg at Easter, nor a bunny hopping across the meadow. It's a vote saying you are a citizen, though it sometimes is chocolate or sometimes vanilla. It can be female or male. It is right or left. I can agree or disagree, but, and this is an important but, I am a citizen. I should be able to vote from prison. I should be able to vote from the battlefield. I should be able to vote when I get a driver's license. I should be able to vote when I purchase a gun. I must be able to vote if I'm in the hospital, if I'm in the old folks' home, if I'm needing a ride to the polling place. I am a citizen. I must be able to vote. Folks were lynched. Folks were shot. Folks' communities were gerrymandered. Folks who believed in the Constitution were lied to, burned out, bought and sold because they agreed all men and women were created equal. Folks vote to make us free. It's not cookies nor cake, but it is the icing that is so sweet. Good for the folks, good for us. My country, 'tis of thee.
So ladies, she's a thug. She said it in the poem. She is a thug. She has the tattoo on her arm, and she wasn't playing when it came to young people getting involved in the voting process and people of color and people coming together and making their voices be heard. My question to you is, what strategies do we need to put into place now, not waiting until the next election cycle, to make sure that young people, people of color, people that are marginalized, realize that they have got to vote locally, they have to vote nationally, that this won't be just a passing phase, that this will be something that we take as a personal responsibility to get out and vote. What strategies do we need to do?
We have to tell them our story, and we have to tell them the stories of those that came before us, and we have to set the example, and show the passion behind it, because otherwise our children think that it's like, how it doesn't impact me, but it does. And if they don't understand the connections, then they will become complacent. And we have a responsibility to keep that fire under them, and without it, then we're just as guilty as they are for being complacent.
I even say for the parents, it's so important for you to be involved in your children's schools, in their classrooms, because you are the eyes and ears, and so you can make correction, you can make change. I remember driving, from work, heading to the Board of Education so I can sit in on the board meetings, because I wanted to understand how they were spending money and what they were spending money on. And even though it seems like a small thing, it was really important, because that is really, where decisions are being made that are shaping the minds of our children. Yet we don't, a lot of us, we don't make the time there. So I think in our educational system, it's so important for us to be seen and heard.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And one of the other strategies that I thought about too is even our leaders of color, that we in this, as specifically this time that the young people have placed in office, that they have a responsibility too. When we talk about the creatives, they have that responsibility, and you can meet young people where they are. Social media, um, going into the school systems, and and having talking to the young people, and just really sharing with them how important it is, and showing them how they can even get involved in the process before election time. How can they stay connected, knowing what's going on before election happens, so that they can follow people and know what these people are doing while in office, and then making sure that they know they're entitled. Their voice should be heard as well. So I think that's one of the strategies that I would like to see, is that those who the young people have placed in office, that they become more involved and connected with the young people as well.
Absolutely. I also think that knowledge is power. And I think that if we, well, I assumed that when I grew up, civics was taught. I think it was a whole class on civics when I was in school. So I just assumed that my kids were getting the same knowledge. And then I found out that they weren't. So it's important that they understand what they're voting for, and what the different branches of government are, and all the different things that affect them. And when they understand, when they have that knowledge and they have that power, they can move with power when they get ready to make their decisions. I would take my kids to the polling place with me since they were very, very little, because kids sometimes will do what you do and not what you say. So I made that example for them growing up. And I also think that we have to counteract some of the noise on social media. There's so much information, there's so much wrong information, and the kids are always on a social media. And if it's on social media, they think it's true. So it's just important that you have these conversations with the youth, so that you can also hear their perspective and understand them and where they're coming from, and also give them that guidance and the wisdom that they need.
So true. Before we close out this section on our honoree, Nikki Giovanni, one of the things that she wrote that I so love, it's a quote that says, "She knows who she is because she knows who she isn't." Mm-hmm. And as we end this tribute, ladies, who are you and who are you not?
I am a queen and I am not worthless.
And my ancestors' wildest dreams.
Love it. I'm powerful, and what I am not is that I just feel like it's time out, no nonsense. Like it's just time for us to get serious. This last year we've seen so much,
Mhm.
and these things have been going on, but I think because of the situation we were in with COVID, that we our eyes really just became open, and I just really feel that it's time for us to utilize our voices and utilize our power. Like Rachel said, put those shoulders up, walk with that walk, but then we gotta do what we need to do. We need to do some action. There's some things that we have to get out here and really get our hands dirty.
For me, I am learning that I am a quiet breeze, but I'm also a lion. It all
Yeah.
depends on what's needed.
From the mouth of our poets, all of you, thank you so much for honoring Nikki Giovanni. We'll be right back with our next honoree, Judith Jameson.
Mother, mother, save your child.
She had arms which were talking by themselves, and she could begin movement that hair-raising feeling you would get, in her way her body moved and her expression, how she danced. She was a wonderful performer.
Now that is what I call Black girl magic. Judith Jameson is amazing. I remember being a young girl and taking dance classes, and my dance teacher's name was Miss Steinberg. And she always put me in African, which I loved, and jazz, which I loved, and tap, which I did not love. But I wanted to be in a ballet. And she one day told my mom that your daughter will never be a ballerina. Her hips are too big. She's too tall. She's awkward. And I just said, okay, I just won't be a ballerina. Miss Steinberg said it can't be me. Then I remember years later seeing Judith Jameson in the Alvin Ailey dance troupe. And when she danced Cry, I'm telling you, I wanted to run to Miss Steinberg and say, you're a liar. I can be a dancer. I can be a ballerina because that was me. That was me. She looked like me. Her body type was like mine. How do you deal with, or how have you dealt with well-meaning people that seem to not understand your passion or your power, and they say things or do things that seemingly cut away at the very fiber of your passion, but they do it, I don't think intentionally. I don't know. Do they do it intentionally?
I look
Hmm.
back, Andrea, to my senior year. Georgetown University was my dream school, and I remember the guidance counselor, basically, in so many words, saying you'll never get there. And I think what happens is it puts a fight in you. Some people, it can cause them to draw back or sit back. But I think it put a fight in me. And I say, even though I knew in the hearts of hearts, we could not afford Georgetown University, I said, I'm going to apply no matter what she said. And I did apply, and I made it all the way through to an interview process, and I didn't get accepted. But I felt as though I was going to prove her wrong because I was like, who is she? I was looking at my grades. I thought my grades were good. I was involved in school activities. I worked. through high school. So I was like, who is she to tell me that I can't get accepted to Georgetown University? So I think what happens is it has to, depending on your personality and who you are, and again, um, what you see in yourself will either cause you to fight, but then like yourself, you said, I can't do it. She told me I can't do it. And how many people in this world have not done things or pursued their passion because someone told them? And like you said, is it intentional? Sometimes I think yes. And then sometimes no, because sometimes it even can come from family members who don't mean to harm, but because they feel as though they think that they know you or know what you're capable of, that you can't do it. So I think that we have to like instill in our children, which I know everyone here has, that you can do anything that you put your mind to, anything, and you can be whoever you want to be.
Amen, sister. I have a similar story, Wandra. I wasn't a dancer, but I was tall and awkward. I already shared that. And I had a teacher who saw Mrs. Tenzer. I shared about her on social media, but her impact, she was like, I'm going to show you someone who you look like. And she introduced me to Judith Jameson and the Alvin Ailey Dancers. And so while I wasn't aspiring to be a dancer, she wanted me to see the beauty of the skin. You know, this little short Jewish lady, 5 foot tall, would take me by my face and pour into me. Um, and that resonated, that stayed, that stuck, you know. And even as I travel, like I travel through life, you go back to those moments where you have people inspiring you. When you have people in your face like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to pursue that? Why are you trying to do that? Why you? That's what we say in our family. Why you? The why yous. Um, so it's so interesting. And then I recall when I worked in the world, when I worked in commercial, I was managing a building in Philadelphia, in Center City, and being a commercial property manager, there's not a lot of us there anyway, especially Black women. It's a white male dominated field, like engineers, like, you know, just that segment. And I remember showing up for work, and this Irish engineer, he didn't really know who I was, right? And so we walk into this room, and they said, this is your new boss. And he looked at me, his eyes opened up. He said, this is your new boss, Elise Minor. This is so and so. And he said, oh, he said, do you know you're the 14th manager that we've had here, and you're not going to be here long. And
Mm.
Angela, like you said, and I felt that way down in my soul. And just like you said, it lit a fire in me to make sure that I outlasted him. You know, so but I don't know. I know that he meant it. Like, you know, you hear those assignments, and so you have to take a different posture. And I think that throughout life, the lessons that you learn, it positions you to be able to withstand, you know, we just
They treat it like, you know,
in any arena, you know, that you're not limited by acting in a particular arena based upon your gender.
Mhm. And your narrative doesn't have to be what they want it to be. You know, being fully able to tell your stories, to live out what it is that God has put in you, you know, so, you know, and being fully actualized as a woman in your strength in that story, because I think a lot of times we minimize our stories because they're hard. You know, they're hard. Even Monique, your story about, you know, what your professor said, like that's a hard story, but really that's the strength, and that is what makes feminism feminism, because you can share that story and use it to for someone else to be empowered for their purpose. You know, you're writing your own narrative because you decided. And I think that it's a compliment to society for us to come into that space, you know, like a lion, Rachel, like a
Right?
lion.
right.
Mhm.
But when you read Sean Gay's For Colored Girls Who Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, when I first read it, you know, I was younger, I think I was in my late teens. And when I saw it on stage for the first time, you know, I was maybe 21, 22. And my perspective was these women have survived so much. And that was just the small narrative.
Mhm.
Then I matured and lived a little. And my perspective of For Colored Girls definitely changed.
Mhm.
Can you guys see the progression in your own perception of For Colored Girls from the first time you saw it to maybe where you are today? What was the message that you received?
Initially, I looked at it as, yeah, 14, 15, 16 years old, as a whole bunch of angry people, angry women. You know, I knew that the things they spoke were spoken well, but I was like, man, they're angry. And now, as I look at the work, I understand. Um, hmm, I understand more of the purpose behind it, and I'm grateful that the voices were spoken, because the the flip side of that is to hold all of that inside and and never and bury it so deeply so that you never become who you fully are. So now I see it as a form of release, you know, a form of fighting to be who you really are, and um, not swallowed up by the negative forces that can sometimes invade our lives.
When I saw it as a young girl, my mom actually, we saw it in a park in the Bronx, and by street performers, and it was very powerful. But I remember feeling just like, oh my God, like they were so hard, like it was such hard content. And in my innocence, not realizing that those stories would become a part of me, that I would meet those women along my walk of life and understand those women. So even when I watch it now, the Tyler Perry version, it's amazing how many of those women that I have met, and how many of those women have decided to still come full forward in strength and power, you know. But yeah, I remember just saying, "Oh my goodness, like what kind of light? Like what's going on?" And now I realize that that was the truth that she was telling.
I think for me, I remember thinking, why would these women allow these different things to happen to them? And, why don't they stand up and walk away? Or, that was me in my youthful innocence. And, now that I'm older, I see myself in every woman. I see a little bit of me in every woman.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is that Ntozake, she was so young herself, when she wrote those things. So she, just to be able to capture voices that go beyond what you would expect that someone her age would know is remarkable and a testament to her talent.
It's something between the voices and the colors. It makes you feel like you two are on this rainbow journey, from one moment to the next. The bottom line is that I have value. And I don't need to be validated by anybody else until I validate my own existence. And she's just beautiful. There's just the whole choreo poem is just beautiful. But one of my favorite parts says, somebody, anybody, sing a Black girl song. Bring her out to know herself, to know her and sing her rhythms, caring, struggle, hard time. Sing her song of life. She's been dead so long, closed in silence so long. She doesn't know the sound of her own voice, her infinite beauty. She's half notes scattered without rhythm. No tune sings her sighs. Sing the song of her possibilities. Sing a righteous gospel. Let her be born. Let her be born and handled warmly. Can you guys share, when did you find the sound of your own voice?
I think thinking back, probably I would say in college, because I think that's when you're like I was away from home. I was only 2 hours away, but I was away from home, and having been so used to being, with my mom, and just you start to see things for yourself because you don't always have that, to turn to her immediately and say, what do I do or how do I handle this? And then you start to look around and realize that you have to grow up. You have to become an adult. So, and then you begin to find out who you are, and being able to really at a university that actually had programs, a lot of different programs for people of color, like the African American history. I took the African American dance, and again, thinking these things were not, things that I would be able to do. And so I think that's where your voice and that you begin to develop as you start to become an adult. And also through your adult years, your voice can change.
So I joined the military when I was 17, and so as a 17-year-old, you listen to adults and you trust adults and you just do what you're told. But when you go into the military, you're considered an adult, and you have all these responsibilities, and you're trying to navigate your way through this space. And I was being told to do things that I did not agree with, and I'm like, do I have a right to defend myself? And it's tough because in the military, defending yourself can be considered insubordination. So I had to navigate and figure out how to protect myself and defend myself in any type of situation without being disrespectful, without it being insubordination. And that struggle is where I first found my voice, because I was about to give up, and I called my aunt who was also in the military at the time. She had already been in 20 years, and I was like, I don't know what to do, Auntie. This too much. And she was like, you know what to do. Listen to your heart. And it'll guide you, and you will fight. You will fight for yourself, and you will learn how to fight for yourself. And I was like, okay. But I did, and I had to, even when I stood up for myself and they said, oh, she's been insubordinate, and I got in trouble, I got written up. But I didn't stop there, because I wasn't being insubordinate. I was being asked to do something that wasn't appropriate, and I was defending myself. So I took it all the way. I fought all the way to the top until I had it overturned. And that's when I realized, I have a voice, I have a right to defend myself, and there's a proper way to do it. And it was very hard to learn for a 17-year-old, but that's where I really gained my strength.
Well, I don't want to put her on the spot, but Monique, we know one of her passions is acting. And one day I had the opportunity and the privilege to see her perform Apologies, which is part of the one of the poems that is in Sean Gay's piece. Monique, would you mind sharing for our audience the portion entitled Apologies?
Of course. One thing I don't need is any more apologies. I got sorry. Greet me at my front door. You can keep it. I don't know what to do with it. I didn't know I was so important to you. I can't even get to the clothes in my closet for all of the sorries. I'm going to have to throw some away. Cause see, I let sorry, I didn't mean to. How was I supposed to know about that? Take a walk down a dark and musty street in Brooklyn. You are always inconsistent, doing something then being sorry, beating my heart to death. I will not be nice. I will not call. I will scream, holler, throw things. I'll do whatever I want to do. And I won't be sorry for none of it. Oh, and I'll list all my wonderful lovers in detail so you can see it. See, I loved you on purpose. I was open on purpose.
Wonderful. If that is not a woman who has finally found her voice, I don't know which other character really just resonates more for me than that character that said apologies. Thank you so much, Monique. Powerful. Yes, you are an actress. Yes, you are. There's a portion of that poem that says, but being alive and being a woman and being colored is a metaphysical dilemma I haven't conquered yet. Do you see the point? My spirit is too ancient to understand the separation of soul and gender. My love is too delicate to be thrown back in my face. That's the section entitled, My Love Is Too, and expresses the validation that each of these women places upon her love. Now it's your turn, ladies. I'm putting you on the spot. I want you to express your personal statement of, my love is to have thrown back in my face. You fill in the blank.
My love. Go ahead, Monique. Is that you?
Yeah, I said my love is too heavy to have thrown back in my face.
And I said that my love is too empowering to have thrown back in my face.
My love is too rich to have thrown back in my face.
Right now, we need to take some time to honor the incomparable Nina Simone. Nina states that freedom is a feeling. Freedom is having no fear. But we all deal with fear at some point in our lives. And there truly is a difference between having a spirit of fear that paralyzes us and dealing with fear that sometimes is that ignition that ignites us to move forward past the fear to pursue our passion. And Elise shared with me the other day a beautiful poem about fear. Elise, can you share that with our audience?
Love to. This poem is called Fear, and it's by Khalil Gibran. And I must say that my mother was such an avid reader of his. And I found this particular poem dog-eared in a book that she was reading. So it stuck to me for all of these years. But he says, it is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter, there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that is where the river will know it is not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean.
And to,
That's good.
And to me, reading that poem for the first time when you sent it to me, Elise, and thinking about Nina Simone, and she was this classically trained pianist that was not accepted in that world. And the fear that she must have had when, you know, all of her hopes and her dreams and her training seemed to not be appreciated. But being the woman that she is, she took an experience of the 4 young Black girls that were killed in Mississippi. And she turned that fear of not being able to pursue classical, to pursue jazz and become the Empress of Soul. The courage that it took to make that shift, but the fear that it would have probably endued her for the rest of her life to stay stagnant in a world where her voice was not being heard. In recent years, guys, and even last year especially, there have been just so many events that have happened. What has been your response in the George Floyd march, the March for Black Lives Matter, all of the racial tension that we've seen in the streets. What particularly brought you fear, but also made you say, I can't stay in this fear?
I like to share that I love Nina Simone and I love her story. Um, the fact that she was classically trained required a great amount of discipline on her part, a great amount of support from her family, even when it was uncomfortable. And I know that that prepared her for the journey into her activism. And I take a lesson from that because I think it's so important that we emphasize the importance of preparation to our young people. We emphasize the importance of establishing a discipline that is going to be required as the demand is placed. I feel that this season with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all of the others who had sacrificed their life to get our attention, but now it's going to be a season where we have to have the discipline to recognize where we need to step up and step in. And it's so much more than just a march. You know, when you can't march, you can write letters. When you can't write letters, like Monique said earlier, you can raise awareness on social media platforms and use your voice in different ways. And I think that the lesson from Nina Simone is that she was able to pivot the way that we are learning to pivot. She was able to pivot and abandon her idea of what she thought her life was going to be and to allow it to be something that was much greater than her. She allowed it to, the creativity to become her voice. And that's what I absolutely love about her. And so I think that for us, taking those same lessons and saying we have to get the discipline, we have to prepare, we have to be aware, and we have to be willing to just go and pivot, you know, and abandon what we may even think is supposed to be our life in order to further the cause, you know, for the generation that's coming behind us.
That is so true. It's like we think we're going to go, you know, down one road, one path, and life happens. Life happens, and it's about taking the reins and saying, okay, you don't want me there? I know a place. Ain't nobody crying. I know a place where, you know, jazz is considered Black classical music, and there she thrived. And there she became the voice of a generation. I remember growing up in Brooklyn and the song Young, Gifted, and Black. I mean, you played that at my kindergarten graduation, at my 6th grade graduation. We played it at every celebration. That was just the theme and the heartbeat of growing up in Brooklyn, in Brownsville. And there are a lot of young people today that have never even heard that song. I remember playing it for my kids when they were younger and asking them later on, you know, do you remember that song? Like, Mom, yes, you played it to life, but it gave me life. That's why I played it so much. If there was an anthem for today's young people, what would the theme be? What is it that they're holding on to or promoting?
I think it would be something like, you're beautiful beyond what you can see. Because I think our generation, or the young generation today, is so caught up on what they look like, you know, whereas in my generation, or at least I would say for me, there weren't as many images of Black beauty before you. But now the children see that, you know, in the various artists that you see on TV and whatnot, but it's a surface level beauty. And I think we've forgotten that underneath all of the exterior, there's depth to us. And I would like the theme to be that you're beautiful beyond what you see, and look deep down inside to see what it is, because there's a lot of depth there, and we just have to bring it to the surface. We have to cultivate it so that our perspective of beauty isn't just skin deep.
I agree, Rachel.
I also think that that the young people feel like not all Black people fit in a box. So they have a little bit more freedom to express themselves. And I think that the journey will be knowing that that's okay. Knowing that that's okay to be unique and express yourself in any way that you feel. Because my son, it's just so funny because my son asked me yesterday and he says, well, you know, I have a lot of white friends, but sometimes I don't feel like I fit in. And then with my Black friends, I said sometimes he doesn't feel like he fit in. But I said it's not about fitting in. It's about being yourself. And no matter what space that you're in, that you can be yourself. And, you know, it's just so much with the social media and the internet and everything that they have access to now that we didn't have that issue when I was growing up. And we had a lot of issues, but we didn't have to deal with that one.
Just talking about the beauty and the depth of who we are as women of color. I remember the controversy when Zoe Saldana was chosen to play in the Nina Simone biopic. And it caused a stir. You guys remember, it caused quite a stir. Years later, after all that criticism, Zoe Saldana actually apologized for having to, you know, darken her skin and wear the prosthetic nose, and in order to play Nina Simone in this movie. Why do you think the choice for Zoe Saldana for this role offended so many women of color? And people in general, but specifically women of color?
And even her daughter, Wandria, was very upset, Nina Simone's daughter, at that time. And I think that what happened is that if you think about it, you look at it as she was not her authentic self. And by her doing that, it would be to me kind of the same when um, people wear blackface. And I think that's probably what happened into making people so upset that she probably took a role that, like, she realized later that maybe she should not have taken, or if she had to take it, to maybe have been for her authentic self and not feeling like she had to change who she was in order to portray her life. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're asking, for you to beautifully, you know, show that person's life, display who they are, and not so much what they look like. Everyone is We're uniquely made. So when people play actresses or actors, they're not always going to look like them, but you want to represent who they were. And I don't think her darkening her skin and changing her nose was doing justice for Nina.
Because it continues the narrative that they write the scripts, they finance the look, the message, and so they get to choose who they want, you know. And I just find that as we continue to understand what that's supposed to look like, that we have a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. And we're able to change the conversation. In a way, I kind of empathize, felt empathy for her because she took the role, mm-hmm. And whoever was on her team was said, well, you might want to not, but we're so cut out of so many opportunities that, even Black women and brown women, like, we'll take anything to keep our name out there because that's your craft, right? You want to exercise your craft. But You know, I felt bad that she had to go through so much scrutiny when at the table where the decisions are being made, that these discussions were not being had. There's a host of beautiful brown skinned talented women that
Right.
that can do justice to the role.
And I guess it's like, when do we say no? Like I look at Cicely Tyson, like
Mhm.
roles that she constantly turned down
Right.
throughout her career because she just did not feel that it represented, you know, us as Black women. So when do we say no? And I do understand what you're saying, Elise, in reference to, you know, trying to keep your name and your craft. But when do we show, you know, those, like you said, at the table, that no, this is not right?
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
I think that so reminds me of a quote, and I know our dear friend Kenya has a T-shirt. That's when you create your own table.
Right.
If
Mm.
you know my being Black and beautiful cannot land me the role because you're looking for a specific type, then I have to go out, purchase the table, create the table, and set the setting on my own. And that is what's happening today when you look at, you know, the creative world, you know, the Shonda Rhimes and the Regina Kings. If if you haven't seen the movie about, you know, Muhammad Ali and Sam Cooke coming together, I can't, One Night in Miami. It is a dynamic movie directed by Regina King. And I'm just, you know, so proud. And of course, Ava DuVernay. There's so many women of color that are saying, I have a story to tell. I'm more than slavery. Yes, that's a part of my history, but that's not all of me. I have something to say. So I'm not going to wait for the invite any longer. I love that women of color are saying, I got my own table.
Amen. Amen.
So when we talk about, Rachel hit upon a very good point when we talk about, you know, the many hues of Black women. I love that we come in all shades, that we cannot be fit into a box, but yet that standard of beauty, of what society calls beauty, is still out there. We still deal with it. Um, but Nina Simone wrote a powerful song called For Women. And in that song, she exposed the Eurocentric appearances and standards that are imposed on Black women in America. It pits us one against the other, you know, light skin versus dark skin versus medium skin, you know, the whole hair thing. What is good hair? It's on my head, so it's good. But in that song, it's called I Put a Spell on You. Simone said that the purpose of the song was to inspire Black women to define beauty and identify for themselves without the influence of societal impositions. How do we do that though? How do we do that? And what do you say to the young Black girl who's overwhelmed by the pressures of social media and influencers?
Mm.
I think that identity is cultivated at home, and self awareness of who you are. And just having the time and the space as parents to really pour into our children. I've heard several of us kind of mention, you know, just the importance of building that, you know, in the home is so important. I do feel that while social media plays a big influence on look and you know, I feel it also is starting to come into a classism, you know, because you have to have these things to appear affluent. You know, I am of the thought that education, and not just collegiate, but also trade and creative education, is the new currency of this next generation. And so a lot of us as parents have to abandon that traditional model that you're going to go to college and you're going to get a, you know, and really embrace the gifts and talents that your children have. Um, you know, and as we do that, we'll start to see them abandon what capitalism and all of these images that Hollywood and you know society puts on our people to be, and we'll begin to create our own narratives. Yeah. And there's a great book. It's called How to Raise Children of Destiny by Patricia Brown. And it breaks down the God-given gifts and purposes in all of our children. And I will tell you, and it's biblically based, but it is on point. There's a whole slew. But I think that book really changed my perspective on how God sent them with a specific identity. And it was me as a parent, Sean as a parent, to make sure that I cultivated that and that they would not give in to the pressure of the world to create a different identity outside of what God had for them. Okay.
That is
so
good. No, that and scene.
I need that book. I'm gonna get that book. But I just wanted to say I have a mentor group as girls, melanated girls, ages 12 to 18, and we did discuss, different things like wearing your natural hair in the workplace. That was one of our topics that we went over. But I was really surprised to see that the girls, they didn't have an issue with wearing their hair natural. They've grown up in this time where natural hair is on the rise. Like, it's booming, and black women, we can wear our hair anyway we want, natural, curly, straight, any way. The girls were really positive, and they didn't realize that was an issue in the past. Like, showing up in the workplace, you couldn't show up as yourself. We in there frying and dying, laying our hair to the side, trying to fit into this narrative. And they have that freedom to show up that way and then not be as big a deal as it was before. And there's even laws being passed. It's a shame that there has to be a law for you not to be discriminated against based on your hair texture, but there are laws, I think, in New York and a few other states.
I think it's also important to talk to our young ladies and our young men about what love really is and what it looks like, because I think our families have been broken in many ways, that the true identity of what love looks like is hard for many children to see. So they think that it's that you love me when you calling me out my name. And I know it sounds twisted, because it is, but it's the reality of many of our children. And I think one way to combat that is to, especially for our young ladies, is to help them understand what true fatherhood is, and to have them, like, I remember saying to my dad, "Am I beautiful?" And that was not because he didn't tell me before, but it was because the outside voices had grown a little bit louder than the internal voices, the voices that had had in my family. So if I struggled with that, and I had a strong father in my life, then how much more are our young ladies and even our young men, because the men learn how to be men oftentimes by the other men they see in their lives. So I think we have to make certain that we are providing opportunities for our children to see what love really looks like from a healthy, whole perspective, from a godly perspective, from the way a man treats a woman and a woman treats a man.
And also too, I'm not really sure, but also too, I was thinking in reference to like what we were saying. Sometimes Monique said, like, when people see you do something, and that's with children, but also too, what type of really positive publications do we have, that when they're turning those pages of those magazines, and what is it that they see, besides Beyonce? What are our children reading? I mean, I know for us, we have Essence and Ebony, but what publications are there out there for the young adults? And I'm just saying, I would even love to see like a young adult create one that where that they can see their selves, and not negatively anything against, but not always the rap artists, but like we said, the dancers, people like real hidden figures, just to be able to see those type of people for themselves, to know that they're beautiful just like them.
Amen. I remember getting my children a family subscription to Black Enterprise because I just felt like they needed to see, Black business
Right.
people out there in the real world that look like them instead of them, getting these other crazy, we want Blockbuster. Like, no, Black Enterprise, who did you read about, and exposing them, like you said, just exposing them to the wide array of talent that's out there and not just the ones that they want us to see.
Right.
Mm.
So we thank you so much, Nina Simone, for opening the door for us to see ourselves and to not be afraid to express the beauty and all the hues that make us who we are. Thank you. Our final honorees for tonight are the voices of the Black experience. Sweet Honey in the Rock.
In the words of Ezai Maria Barnwell, she says, "For each child that's born, a morning star rises, sings to the universe who we are, and we are one." Yeah. Oh, whoa, whoa. Oh, oh, for each child born, morning star rises, sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, morning star rises, sings to the universe who we are. For each child born, a morning star rises, sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, mothers of time, daughters of dust, sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, mothers of love, lovers of light, builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the spirit of God. We are one. 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 We are one.
Sweet Honey in the Rock has been mesmerizing audiences since 1973. What do you ladies feel has helped their legacy just to endure for so long?
Wandra, that is one of my favorites. And just knowing, I think the fact that their music, and I'm taking this back to something Rachel said earlier about when you hear music, you sit and listen, and how they've taken that non-violent approach to talk about freedom and to talk about the social and just causes, and the fact that they built that group on godly principles, that their name actually came from Psalms 81:16, where they actually, when the land cried out and when you opened the rocks, honey poured out. And when their voices got blended together and they heard their voices together, that's what made them name their group. And I just think because they always have such a powerful message, and it's not all that distraction of music, that they are actually singing this a cappella, and they're even with their mouths making sounds of the instruments. I I love them. I just feel that they're so powerful, and that I think that's why they continue to, just live on, and that they're it's a group that I don't think that every generation they're able to understand what their message is.
I remember seeing them. It had to be 2019 because we had COVID last year, so it had to be 2019 at the Annenberg Center, and they sang Ella Song, which is one of the songs that was written about Ella Baker, who was a civil rights activist, and she promoted activism, grassroots, going knocking on doors. If there was a march, you coming with me today. That was Ella Baker, and they wrote Ella's song, and the lyrics say, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes, until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons." And that was the message of Black Lives Matter. That's all we were saying. We're not saying other lives don't matter, but Black Lives Matter. And I remember at the Annenberg Center when Sweet Honey in the Rock was in concert, and they got to the portion where they begin to lay out all the names of the Black young men and women that had lost their lives through, violence, police brutality, all sorts of crimes. And I remember when I first heard it, and then last year, 2 years ago, how long the list had gotten. I remember sitting there and just crying. I was in tears that here we are, and our lives still do not matter. In your opinion, why do you think saying Black Lives Matter provokes so much controversy?
I think that Black lives, Black history has always been intimidating to many people. And when we say Black Lives Matter, I think it touches a chord of insecurity in other people. They're like, well, wait a minute, what makes that so special? When in essence, like you just said before, all our lives matter, but when there's so many instances of neglect and darkness towards Black life, then I have to remind you of what is a God-given fact, that we all matter. But since you disregard it, maybe because of intimidation or misunderstanding, then I have to tell you.
I think we also, and Rachel, I love what you said. We have to speak it. I think that we come through generations and generations of people who feel like they've done good by us. We've done good by you. We let you, and we allowed you to, and not recognizing that everything as a Black person that we had to fight for. Each generation had something to fight for. And so it's almost like a slap in the face. Like, how dare you, after all I've done for you? But I love it. I love it. It reminds me that our voices have power. And anytime something you say invokes a response, such as the Black Lives Matters has, you know that you've struck a chord. You've hit the sweet honey in the rock. And I think that it causes and allows people to pause for reflection.
So we thank Sweet Honey in the Rock for being our historians, from Wade in the Water to Ella's Song to The Remembrance. They have recorded the soundtrack of the movement, and we thank them. And we thank you for joining us on tonight. I want to especially say to my panelists of Sister Friends, thank you for saying yes. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, let me think about it. You were all in, and I thank you for your brilliance. I thank you for your shine. I thank you for just being you. Tonight has been a night of inspiration, celebration, and the declaration that because of them, I am. And before we leave tonight, quickly, ladies, tell us all, because of them, I am, you fill in the blank.
Beautiful.
Powerful.
A conqueror.
Ignited.
Unstoppable. Don't forget, we are Black history. Have a good night.
Because of them, I am. I thank you, Maya Angelou. Because of you, I have a voice. Nikki Giovanni, because of you, I am uncompromising. Judith Jameson, because of you, I am bold. And Tonzange Shange, because of you, I'm thoughtful. Nina Simone, because of you, I am unstoppable. And Sweet Honey in the Rock, because of you, I am legendary. I am Black history.